I ran into my friend Pam at the East Bank Club. She's a school teacher. I usually see her sitting by the pool, grading papers. Pam always looks happy, but she stopped me this Sunday as I passed her on the way to the pool, and she told me that she had left teaching. She was called in by the DCFS when a student reported her to the principal for shaking her finger at a student. She said they asked her repeatedly how close her finger was to the student's face. They told her to stop lying and that it would go easier on her if she followed the script of the charges against her. Pam is a lovely person, but listening to her, I didn't quite think the shock of the whole experience had really registered with her yet. Many of us are living in a world that has changed all around us. What was once a social convention is now a threatening behavior. Opening a door for a woman is misogynistic, correcting papers is profiling, and disciplining is a crime. I'm always glad to see Pam at the East Bank Club, but perceived intent has made us all perpetrators of a crime. And every moral and social virtue, well, they're just forever gone with the wind. Welcome. Welcome to Sunday Coffee Hour. I'm Stanley Smith. At Sunday Coffee Hour, we talk about everything and nothing. This Sunday, we talked about scheduling theater tickets around surgery, about having a little sadness mixed in with our happiness, coming up with an algebraic equation for life, and finding a good bakery. The readings at Washington National Cathedral were from Kings. This house cannot contain you. And the name of this house is The Lord is Here. And from Revelations, I'm making all things new because the first things have passed away. At Washington National Cathedral, it was Founders Day, and the sermon was by Bishop Marianne Budde. These services at National Cathedral were first held on the site of the cathedral before the building was even built, starting in 1893. Marianne said that once we lay the foundation, we never see it again, but it has important ramifications for the entire structure. It's important to do the slow, hard work of laying a good foundation. We're tempted to cut corners and let others clean up the mess later on if something goes wrong. But in truth, most of us do our best. We don't intentionally set out to create a flawed foundation. It's not our intent, and it's not definitive, yet we're often defined by it. Sometimes the damage of a flawed foundation can be too great, but with care and hope, we can repair it with healing and reconciliation. We exist on the foundations built by those who came before us. At some point, we recognize the faults in some of our foundations, institutions, and cultures, faults that are intentional and unintentional. Marianne said the replacement of the Confederate stained glass at National Cathedral with new windows by Kerry James Marshall is a form of healing. Marianne said that the removal of the Confederate windows is an acknowledgement of the lie of the lost cause, the lie of the history of Reconstruction, because it extolled the virtue of Confederate leaders by lifting them up as saints. Marianne said that this was an effort by our white ancestors to reunite the nation and preserve racial dominance and to continue to subjugate Black people. Marianne said the cathedral and most other white institutions participated in the perpetuation of the lie of the lost cause, willingly or unknowingly. Essentially, we must rewrite the script of our past to meet our current crimes. Reinterpreting our foundation is the perfect vehicle for the condemnation of our current structure. It's also the perfect opportunity to create a space for the obfuscation of the cause. It's not a new story. In history, we have the story of Sinai and the sin of the golden calf. Christ had the betrayal. The French Revolution had Napoleon, and the Civil War had Reconstruction. Every time we're at our mountaintop moment, someone always seems to swoop in and make off with all the goods. This is an archetypal story included in most of the world's religions and initiatory rites. A definitive book on the topic of the Reconstruction, The Unresolved Legacy of Reconstruction by Eric Foner, says the failed promises of the federal government reverberate today. Of course, the federal government was what the Confederacy was fighting against to begin with. It wasn't a lie or a lost cause. It's just the reality that we're still living in today. At St. James Cathedral, the reading was about the workers in the field. Those who came late to the work were paid the same as those who had toiled in the field all the day long. It's social and economic injustice in action. Lisa said parables are stories in the Bible that are trying to tell us something. She said Amy Jill Levin said that parables they're not self-help stories. They're stories that have a surprise and a twist. Lisa said if we're not offended by their meaning, then we're not listening. It's often a finger shaking in our face. If we don't understand the message, then we'll be offended and threatened. No one wants the unwanted attention. It could be seen as harassment and intimidation, but that's what God does. Lisa said we're the laborers who've arrived late in the day. Many people have come before us. We can't demand social justice from those who came before us and labored to set the foundation, because that's not what God does. He invited us into the field now, and it's very late in the story. We're building on the foundations of those who came before us. It's an additive process, not a subtractive one. All we want in life is for everything to add up and be fair. And equal sounds really good to us, but it's only because we don't know what we're asking for. I've been asked to come up with an algebraic equation to explain all this. It's a values proposition. Stephen Covey traced the shift in values starting in the 1920s from public and civic virtue to the cult of individual characteristics. Recently, the Michigan Avenue Association has a upcoming meeting with our new mayor, Brandon Johnson, and we're pondering what to ask for. And the question came up, do any of us really know what we want to ask for? At the Christian Science Church last week, they told me that they believe that sin can be cured and that we experience salvation in this lifetime. The resulting algebraic equation of all this is that we all need to have an ask, and we need to ask our ask. And then we also need to take a look at what we have to offer and then offer that. Then we need to create space for the healing and experience our salvation in this lifetime. Our essence will manifest in the world in the process. I've been a church person my entire life, and I've always had a prejudice against the born again or the saved. And an altar call sounds like anathema to me. I've heard the message in church that if you're a good person and do good stuff, then and when and if you get to heaven, you might find salvation. I don't think I'm alone in having heard it this way. But for whatever reason, when I heard this news thing about salvation in this lifetime at the Christian Science Church, for some reason I heard it in a new way, in a way I had never heard before. There was a lovely hymn at St. James this Sunday during the March to the Gospel. I'm not really a music person, so I'm not sure what was really going on with the organ, but I perceived it as a pedals thing. It was like for every 2 notes forward, there were 3 notes going backwards. It was a counter narrative going on, and I think I love a counter narrative. The words teach me the wayward feet to stay and guide them in the homeward way. I made my own bootleg video of the gradual hymn at St. James. The sound is good, but the video, it buffers a little, and it's slightly out of register with the action. It reminds me of a silent film movie. God knows we're going to make mistakes. He knows our lives are slightly out of register with the reality of the world. It's a counter narrative. I'm not sure if Pam should have shaken her finger in the face of the student. Pam's been in the field a long time, and the student is new to the scene. When Margaret Mitchell wrote Gone with the Wind, she thought she was writing a scholarly textbook of Southern lore and history. We're writing a book here with the living of our own lives. Amy Jill Levin is correct that it's a story with a surprise and a twist. Perhaps it is the lie of the lost cause, but we're God's lost cause, and he loves us, and that's no lie. If you would like to join us at Sunday Coffee Hour is every Sunday at 12 noon Central Time on Zoom. I will include my email in the description of this video. I'll be happy to send you an invitation, and I look forward to seeing you very, very soon.